I don't know what it is, man. I've just been feeling kind of Tzeentch-y, right? Like, it's almost as if we just had a big reveal trailer or something. But it got me thinking, I haven't done auto-gen armies in basically an entire year, so perhaps we should give it a shot and see what happens. Welcome back to the Trials of Tzeentch, where the builds are made up and the wins don't matter. Quite often, there is very little skill involved with this game mode, because if you auto-gen and your opponent auto-gens, then whoever is blessed by Randall, the god of RNGesus, is probably going to win. But sometimes, both players get a decent build, or even a very good one, and sometimes it's time to unleash the Plagues of Pestilens against the Dark Elf menace. So here, outside the gates of Altdorf, the Changer of Ways will manipulate fate itself. I am commanding the unwatched Skaven masses, and I must say, not a bad army at all here. It's not too far off from how the Skaven typically like to play. Got a Screaming Bell Gracier of the Lore of Ruin, with all his spells active, of course, because we can't trip those off, otherwise it wouldn't be Trials of Tzeentch, right? The dreaded 13th is likely the most impactful of the bunch. Personally, I think Plague is a much better Lore of Magic, but Ruin can still mess up someone's day in the right situation. Got an Assassin, 2 Plague Claw Catapults, a unit of Plague Monks, and 2 Censer Bearers, including Plague Scab's Plague Pack with their Demagoguery immune to Psych buff, Storm Vermin Halberds protecting the rear, 2 Warp Lightning Cannons, including Iked Zap Zap, Eshin Triads, and a whole bunch of Slaves and Clan Rats, which really just brings a smile to your face, don't it? You don't get to pick your army, but the game still gives you a ton of meat shields to layer the defense with. I think the Great Horned Rat might have staged an intervention here and given us a path to victory provided we can execute. It's always the big question, right? It doesn't matter how good the army is if you can't control it properly. So as the battle gets underway, Warp Lightning Cannon's already opening up, but lots of forest on this map, so plenty of cover for a rush army on the approach, and that's exactly what the Dark Elves have, led by Pajad, with lots of Dark Riders, Cold One Chariots, 3 Dart Shards, and quite the showing from the Cult of Cain. They're led by Sir 20 of House Goodman, Ramsay Bolton, stride his Black Dragon Brachus, Whiplash, Beastlord's Gaze, and Beastslaver, turning him and all friendly monsters into terrifying forces on the battlefield, and probably a bit more AP and focus on elites than the Dark Elves would typically like to have against the Skaven. They have Dread Knights, they have the Sisters of Singing Doom, they have a Canine Assassin, and 2 Harganeth Executioners. It's a well-balanced build all the same, but typically don't need that much AP against the Skaven, but of course he auto-genned as well, so he didn't get to choose, he was just gifted what he got. But I will say, certainly not one of those goofy, cursed armies where you've lost before you've even loaded in. Excited to see what those hidden Dread Knights can do, ready to clever girl their way into the rear and cause some havoc, and naturally, having 4 artillery pieces, Skaven are content to sit back and pound the Dark Elf lines with Pestilence and Warp Lightning. They'd likely lose a straight-up melee engagement, but they have plenty of firepower to make it a bit of a more even fight before the armies clash in CQB. That is, of course, if the Plague Claws can actually hit anything, which is never a guarantee. And for the Dark Elves, it's all about clearing the chaff off the field early, because you don't want your Executioners and Brides of Cain wasting precious time killing Skaven slaves, especially when they're getting targeted by spells and artillery. So Dark Riders and Chariots moving right up the center, cutting down all who stand before them, trying to give a clear avenue of attack for this elite Cainite infantry to buzzsaw their way through. But it's looking like July 4th out there, the rockets' green glare, the plagues bursting in air. It's a torrid affair on the way in, and many will die before they even taste melee combat. Small mercies for the beaten, battered, and starving dark steeds of the Druchii. Fairly standard approach to the front rank deployment for the Skaven here. Push that front line far out in front. Typically don't want compact formations because it's just easier to inundate the rear and shut down the artillery if one's army is too compressed. But so far, catapults have not been impressive. They've managed to kill 2 Executioners this entire time. That's not good. They've had a while to shoot. They've already gotten 4 or 5 volleys off, and they have 2 kills. Warp Lightning Cannon not doing much better over on the other side, and the Bolt Fiends and the Dark Shards in the rear haven't been shut down at all either, and the Skaven don't have a good way to do so, besides blowing them up with catapults, who apparently can't hit a goddamn shot right now. Chariots going right up the center, past the Screaming Bell, backed up by the Sisters of Singing Doom, but those Witch Elves have taken a bit of a pounding, and this is one of those melee engagements where neither side is really going to come out ahead. Plague Monks are squishy and have bonus versus infantry. Witch Elves are squishy and have bonus versus infantry. Both have physical resist, but both just kind of die in droves, so when you put dual-wielding troops against each other, everything's just gonna kind of die in a huge charge from the Cold One chariots, bowling through an entire formation of clan rats and sending them flying across the battlefield. Gorgeous. Brachus over on the far side, lining up a breath attack on the Ashen Triads. Cold One chariot scooting past those Screaming Bell. We'll get another look at that charge again because it was just oh so satisfying the first time. Hell yeah. Big charge coming in. Ashen Triads in the rear just evaporated. And the Dark Elves looking to assert their dominance early here and shut down all this artillery. All their crossbows are still online and doing some good damage against the infantry. Plague Monk Sensor Bears surrounding Brachus as he charges in. Get another look at that breath attack. The noxious fumes coming in from the flank and just beautifully lined up, exploding an entire squadron of ninja rats that could have been a reasonably large threat to Rakarth when he decides to commit to ground. Great pickup for the Dark Elves that should open up the pace of play over on the Skaven left, and Brachus is just straight up feasting on some Skaven booty. Murderous Prowess has activated now. Plague Claws actually starting to land shots, and Executioners have dropped below half HP after being bathed in Bubos. The second and third ranks of Plague Monk Sensor Bears looking to add their own chorus to the dirge. They won't beat Executioners in a straight up fight, but they can put the whooping on them nonetheless, especially if they've already been battered by Plague Claw catapults. Dark Elves have local superiority over on this side and will be looking to push through into the back line once they've dealt with all these clan rats. The Dread Knights have unleashed their little ambush and they're messing up some slaves over there. And the Bolt Fiends and the Dark Shards are all still online, represented by those blue lines too. That is a dreaded 13th spell. Dark Shards pushed too far up, chasing after a unit that had already routed, and Storm Vermin with Sword and Shield coming out of the woodwork and tying them down and will quickly destroy them. Beautiful cast there. Assassin into melee. Harganeth Executioner heads going flying, and they're not headsmen anymore. They're the ones being decapitated themselves. And the assassin is on the hunt, looking like a rabid raccoon. That is one wild rat, and naturally, the headsmen of Cain are fleeing in terror. But I do have a question for you guys. It's not a spell I use very often, but the tooltip for Dreaded 13th spell very clearly says Storm Vermin Halberds, but I ended up summoning Storm Vermin Sword and Board in this battle. I don't know if it's a bug or what, but if anybody can clarify what's going on there, please do let me know. Plague Monk Sensor Bears swarming around Brachus and Rakarth the Beast Lord, and the Screaming Bell has pushed up too far. That focus fire coming in now. Scorched Earth ripping in from the flank, but just barely going to miss on the Bolt Fiends. Not the best cast they've ever done. And though the Screaming Bell has made an impact on this game with the Dreaded 13th and with a couple of nice Warp Lightnings, it looks like that focus fire will be way too much for it. And it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't take long for armor-piercing crossbows to absolutely shish kebab a big hitbox like that one, and Screaming Bell is dead. Definitely mis-microed there. Didn't take long for its death to come. Cold One Chariots charging into the rear of Blightscab's Plague Pack. Dread Knights causing a lot of carnage in the rear right now. The Plague Claws are still shooting in, and the Chariots tied down and ripped asunder by that armor piercing from the Plague Monk Sensor Bears. They did not last long once they got tied down. Executioners tried to come in to support, but too little, too late, and Brachus lining up a breath attack from the flank, and this time the Noxious Fumes are mostly going to miss. Kind of unlucky cast there, but Blightscab's Plague Pack were, I wouldn't say blobbed up, but they looked like a prime target, and instead most of the breath attack is going to go for the handful of stragglers behind the rest of the formation, so not a lot of damage there. And of course, the Demagoguery makes these Sensor Bears immune to psychology, so they will not tear a rout once Rakarth the Beast Lord lands amongst them. Assassin is still going off. This is one of the coolest assassins I have ever seen in any of my replays. He's gotten some awesome attack animations in. He's done some serious work already, and now he's going to face tank a black dragon and try to take him down mano a mano. We'll see how that goes in a second. Storm Vermin Halberds tying up the Dread Knights in the rear. There are still a few artillery pieces that have the opportunity to fire in, but they will have to move and get to a more safe location. Beast Lord's Gaze going down, and the Assassin and Brachus are going at it now. Slippery active, melee defense, and more speed for the Assassin. And oh my god, if this Assassin can actually beat a Black Dragon in melee combat, he'll secure himself a meaty promotion from Night Lord Sneak, and he's doing it. Assassin's Trophy going down. Minus 24 melee defense, minus 24 melee attack. he routes off, but he did his job and then some. That assassin is not an expensive hero, and he just put in, I mean, he hit way above his weight class there. Ricard the Beastlord is running for the edge of the map now. Balance bar is a little bit in favor of Clan Pestilens. If they can get rid of Iked Zap Zap Cannon and the remainder of these Plague Claw catapults, Dark Elves might be okay here, but there's a crew moving all the way back, and they'll be able to fire in. The assassin is fully surrounded by Plague Monk Sensor Bears. The Blight Scabs Plague Pack and their demagoguery has kept them in the fight for a really long time. Most units would have already routed a long time ago, but they're still in it, fully surrounding that assassin. Even though they are losing some models here, that AP is going to hurt that assassin quite a lot. Warplating Cannon firing in on the Dread Knights, and yeah, the balance of power has swung all the way in favor of Clan Pestilens, and it'll take a miracle for the Druki to pull this one out of the bag. Army losses is kicking in now, and that will be the battle. Exciting Trials of Tzeentch game, fast-paced, high-octane, just how we like it, and a lot of it boiled down to the builds, which is usually how it works out in Trials of Tzeentch. Dark Elves did not have a terrible auto-gen army by any stretch of the imagination. It's very well balanced, but it is a little bit elite-centric, a little bit more elite-centric than you would typically like to see if you're up against a Skaven and a build like this one. I mean, you don't need that much AP if you're going up against Plague Monks and Clan Rats and Slave Rats, right? You don't want to have a 1200 gold infantry unit as your front line when you can rely on something that's cheaper. They would hit pretty much just as hard against them and not give up tons of funds when you're getting blown up by artillery. And the Plague Claw catapults and Warp Lightning Cannons ended up paying for themselves. They did pretty well by the time we got into the middle and late stages, and they stayed online for a long time, in large part due to the fact that there were so many meat shields stuffing up the assault on the way in. But stuff almost swung back towards the Dark Elves' favor there when the Screaming Bell went down. Definitely pushed up too far forward. It was a really nice enfilade fire coming in from those ranks of Dark Shards and the Bolt Fiends, which just have so much armor piercing, and a Screaming Bell with a hitbox that large just can't survive for very long. And overall, we saw some nice breath attacks from Ricard the Beastlord, saw some great play from the Blight Scabs Plague Pack and their demagoguery holding out against the Black Dragon, and it was a fun show, so I hope you guys enjoyed Trials of Tzeentch. We'll do some more of it soon if you want to see some more.